Hello YouTube vintage stereo collectors and appreciators. Here's take number 5. I don't know what the problem's been. My last take I tried to boot the tripod over. Sometimes I need quite a few coffees to get going. I'm working on the phono preamp on this KA2000. I've done quite a few of these, and I noticed a similar pattern on them. The C458 transistors, which people have done entire videos about. This thing has several of them inside of it. I noticed that, for instance, there were 4 originally on this board, but 2 were replaced with C631s, and which is good. It probably was very noisy. This probably happened a few years after it was new, but why, if you have the board out, why wouldn't you replace all 4? Well, it depends on what a lot of the repair shops I worked for, the pace at which you had to crank the repairs out was unbelievable, because it was the only way the shop could make money. And it would be things like, I say, you could suggest to the owner, give them a call and say, hey, listen, I noticed this has got a problem. You brought it in for the noisy phono stage, but I think you should replace all the C458 transistors in it. It'll work better in the long run. And usually what you got was, no, just fix the problem. And that was the prevailing wisdom at the time, especially with warranty repairs. Now, in order to get these working well, you've got to spend a lot of time on them. You know, new bias pods, all the electrolytics. The output's actually good on this one. So like on this board, I'm going to do all the electrolytics and all the transistors and see what it sounds like. Sometimes you get noisy resistors. But what I wanted to kind of talk about was the state of the restoration business and audio techs. Somebody got me thinking. They sent me a message about, you know, maybe you should get an apprentice to continue this on. And you know, that was the funniest thing. That's how I got into this, believe it or not. I was always the sidekick. Going way back in my grandpa's workshop, I was always I was sort of his unofficial apprentice as he was restoring wood cabinets and different things like that. And then later on, when I was first started actually in the stereo business, you know, under 20 years of age, I was always the sidekick. The guys were older than me. And they're like, okay, I've got everything going on this one. I want you to put in the outputs and then test it. Like, I was always given only part of the job. But here, the sands of time have shifted, have moved on, and I am now one of the senior people in the business in this area, which is kind of funny because up until 5 years ago, quite a few of the people that I knew that had started maybe in the 70s or even the 60s were still working, and they're just not around anymore. I mean, so I think it's almost generational. Those that would be in their 80s now are rarely still working on this stuff. And I've talked to a couple of friends that mentored me, and they'd say, well, it's my hands, it's my eyesight. We've downsized to a retirement apartment. There's no place to work. And each of these is a loss to the restoring vintage stereos. It's just a loss. It's a shame because very smart people. And I've often, I don't know how to put it, really been sad, you know, when I see an obituary or something. I think, wow, that guy was so much into ham radio, and he worked at Joe's TV for a while, and he worked at other place, and I remember, you know, going to him for advice and picking up tubes, and it's just like, wow. We're into a new era. The techs that are working on stuff, I find most of them are in their 50s, maybe their 60s. And coming up below us, techs in their 40s, there's hardly any, if any. I know one guy that works for a guitar store, and he does the warranty repairs on the on amplifiers and he does, you know, like he rewires the pots on guitars and stuff like that. And we've done a little bit of business. And he's like, I want to get where you are, where I can really diagnose stuff. I said, well, it takes a few years. And what I'm finding now is that, first of all, I had some advantages. When I was young, a lot of people were still doing things with their hands. And trades were actually kind of revered. Now, not so much. When I went to college for electronic engineering technologist in the early 80s, I was one of the last in that program. It changed radically by about 1985, but I was gone. They moved more into IT, and I can't even explain it. Like, it was the electronics component of the courses shrunk, where it used to be actually like nuts and bolts and capacitors, resistors, and troubleshooting and building projects and that kind of stuff. They just ended, and it was the same at the high school level. Some of the high schools that had courses for this kind of stuff, they just didn't anymore. They had budget cuts, things like that, you know. It was pretty unreal. And now we're at a point where I hope I can impart some of my knowledge through YouTube. Because I've had a few people approach me and say, I'd be really interested in learning about this stuff. And I can't even get them to spend an afternoon with me, let alone a couple of years. If that makes any sense. It really is a strange thing. Yeah. So I think a lot of people, this luckily is a type of thing where much of it can be self-taught through trial and error. And that's kind of how it was for me anyway. I came from a time when learning was a little bit different. You know, you'd be working alongside somebody like my grandfather in his shop, which was mainly woodworking, and he'd show you once how to sand something, how to properly put on stain. He'd show you once. After that, he'd say, you're on your own. That used to be his thing. You're on your own now. I already showed you. And maybe that was the way he was taught. You had to be very attentive to what you were shown and told. Whereas now you can, well, if you miss the class or whatever, you can look it up on your smartphone, whatever. Anyway, I don't know, I would like to get a conversation going on this rather than me just kind of meandering. What is the future for techs? Like, I find, I don't know, maybe I could go another 10 years, I don't know. I'm already feeling like I'm slowing down. Some days my hands hurt, and other days I'm just got to do other things. Anyway, thanks for watching and listening.